Welcome back to That Dad Guy. And today I want to talk about something we used to do all the time. We used to know our neighbors. We used to know the people around us, our community, what they did. We looked after them, they looked after us. And do you live in a community that's like that? Well, today we are going to go do just that. We're going to go talk to someone in my community and get to know them a little bit. So if you're interested, come on an adventure.
My name is Rob, and this is my wife.
Caitlin, hi.
And we've moved to New Brunswick from Alberta to start a farm. We had a dream to live on our own land and to be able to carve a paradise that we didn't need a vacation from. We had a couple stipulations. We wanted to be close to the ocean, and if we could, we wanted to try and make it so that we were mortgage free. And after being here for almost 2 years, we've been able to accomplish both of those things and start building a life around us that we've been planning and dreaming about for probably 4 or 5 years before that.
So can I ask, where did you guys first grow up?
We were both born in Vernon.
Well, no, I was born in Vancouver,
Oh, never mind.
So
Yeah.
British Columbia.
British Columbia.
Yeah.
So we both ended up in the same little city called Armstrong in the Okanagan. And we both ended up working at Home Depot at the same time, which is where we met.
Okay.
Yeah, so I grew up in Armstrong, BC, and so did you.
Yeah.
And went to university there and just neighboring in Kamloops. And then we started dating. and
Yeah,
from
so,
there.
and I was born in Vernon, moved to the coast for some time until I was about 9 years old after my grandfather passed away. The family decided to move up to the farm. There was 2 houses on the farm, and so from 9 till I was 20, I was living on the farm, and being the only boy, I got to do all the fun chores.
And what sort of things did they have on that farm?
So what I would do is I would raise 2 head of cattle every 2 years, about anywhere from 75 to 150 chickens, and 50 to 75 turkeys every year, I believe. We had cherry tree orchards, we had a big garden, so I was in charge of taking care of all of the animals, all the fencing. We had a wood burning stove, so I was also in charge of chopping all the wood, you know, all the things that a boy needs to do to spend all that energy. So I had a early exposure to farming life, and at the time I couldn't wait to get off of it. But here I am, 20 years later, and it's the only thing I want to do.
And Caitlin, did you have any exposure to farms before you came here?
Yeah, so my family had moved up from Vancouver and settled in Armstrong, and my mom and dad decided to build a goat farm. And so they built up their farm up to 100 goats. We showed them every year at the local Armstrong IPE. So we had goats, we had cows, and some horses, just like a couple little horses that we were boarding. We didn't have any chickens or turkeys or anything like that. It was mostly just the goats.
Okay.
And so my brother and I would do the chores. Obviously, we helped with the hay. We had a big garden and some orchard trees, I believe, if I'm remembering right. And we'd help with delivering the goats. So when they would go into kidding season, we were out there in the barn helping. My dad would be sometimes having to help pull the baby goats out, and we'd do the drying off and a little bit of resuscitation and stuff like that. So it was really a good experience, like growing up and being so closely involved with animal care, and it taught us a lot.
So how did you get from British Columbia to Alberta? You said you moved from Alberta.
So we were both working at Home Depot, and I was feeling like I was at a bit of a dead end. I was managing a merchandising department, and it just didn't feel like I was really going anywhere. BC had become very unaffordable at the time. High taxes, high house costs. We did own we had bought a small house.
It's like 500 square feet.
Yeah, it
It's
was
tiny.
very tiny, 2-bedroom, 500 square foot house. So it was a tiny little cabin, but it wasn't enough for us. We love to travel, we love to go and do things, and having Caitlin trying to work 3 different jobs, me working full time and trying to find a better paying job, we were looking for opportunities, and that's where Alberta came in. We had a family member, a cousin that was living in Alberta, and they graciously allowed us to come and rent out their basement for a few months while we saved up a down payment. And finding a job in Alberta was the easiest thing we'd ever done. Like, compared to BC, where you were almost in fistfights for a part-time position that was paying minimum wage, in Alberta, it was like everybody was hiring.
And they were actually like hiring, like interviewing you for the job, like
Yeah.
not that you had to fight for the job. They wanted to
It,
try
it,
and
it was
coax
weird.
you into getting the job.
Yeah.
So what sort of work were you
Incentivize.
doing in Alberta?
So I started off working, I was managing a lot for a quad and motorbike company called Echo Cycle, and they were in the process of moving. So I worked there for about 9 months and helped them with the different tasks that they needed there, trying to get things more efficient and whatnot. I wanted to become a firefighter. They were advertising really heavy for recruiting firefighters. I got my class 3, but I failed the medical. I was wearing glasses at the time, and so they wouldn't allow me because of the glasses, high heat environments and whatnot, that causes a risk. So a buddy of mine I was playing floor hockey with suggested to come and apply it at his workplace, and it was a garbage man, and I'm thinking, a garbage man? I want to be a garbage man? I don't know why I was so hesitant about that, or what had me kind of rubbed the wrong way about garbage man, but I decided to do it anyway, and I absolutely loved it, and spent the next decade working as a garbage man, driving truck. It was the best job I'd ever had, loved it. And the only reason, and it was kind of a bit of a catalyst as to why we had to change our lifestyle, was I ended up with a medical issue that was probably related to sitting in the truck for 10 to 12 hours a day. I needed surgery for it, and I needed to change my lifestyle in order to prevent that issue from reoccurring. So at that point, it was kind of like a kick in the butt to get out there and start looking for something else. And there was nothing else that I could really think that I wanted to do other than to get back into farming, even if it was just small scale farming.
And Caitlin, what were you doing for work at the same time while you're in Alberta?
So I've been in healthcare for 13 years, and so I worked at the Alberta Health Service hospital out there, and working in neonatal care, so with premature babies, and it was very rewarding, very fulfilling. I loved that job, and so it was hard to give that up and move out here, but I found work at the local hospital here as well.
So after you decided you needed a change, what made you look at New Brunswick or other places to get back into farming?
Well, the thing about living in Edmonton is hardly anybody there is from Edmonton. And so there was a lot of people in our social circle that had come from New Brunswick. And so we got to ask a lot of great questions about them, their experience living in New Brunswick, if they'd ever moved back, etc. And they were all very positive. It was all very positive feedback. As well as I had a friend that moved out to Nova Scotia years ago, and he'd been able to accomplish the same thing. So moving out to New Brunswick was an opportunity. After doing some research, it was an opportunity where we could sell everything that we had in Alberta to be able to afford what we wanted here in New Brunswick, and have that accomplishment of being mortgage free. We had some investments and that sort of stuff to go into it. but it was very affordable to move to New Brunswick for us at that time.
And how did you find this particular piece of property?
So we worked with a realtor, Jenny Corlett, and she was absolutely amazing. She would drive an hour and a half, 2 hours out here just to take a very pixelated video with her camera.
With no Wi-Fi.
With no Wi-Fi or cell phone service, just doing everything that she could on any property that we were looking at. She was there to do it all.
So, and funnily, like strangely enough, this property, it said that there was a well on it.
Yes.
And so she, in her, with her camera phone, she went out and tried to find it in the bush, and just
She was not dressed for the
there was
probably.
there was no real like you saw it when we first drove in. There was barely a driveway. It was all covered in
The
trees.
weeds were half as tall as a man,
And
it was
she's
just-
out there trying to find this well.
Yeah. So she finally helped us to purchase the property. Everything went fairly smoothly that way until we had the land surveyed.
Okay.
First of all, it was kind of advertised that it had a well and a septic system. It looked like it had a concrete pad to build on. And when we came out here, none of that was true. No one could find the well. No one could find the septic system. And the concrete pad was falling apart from one end to the other. And then when we went and had the land surveyed, it was advertised as having 175 feet of road frontage. That also turned out to not be true. So we could have claimed insurance and gone back on that, but we opted not to and to go ahead with it. There was a little triangle piece that was in front of our property that it was obviously undeveloped, and so we pursued the owners and made an offer and made a deal to purchase the piece that was in front of the property, giving us the road frontage that we needed to be able to access the property.
And did you do that once you got here, or did you know that when you were in Alberta still?
We had to do all of that over correspondence on the phone.
Okay.
During my surgery, it gave me a lot of time to just be at home, to do nothing. Not much I could have done except for pick up a phone and do a lot of planning. So by the time we came out here, I already had a contractor lined up to help us clean the property. I had the land surveyed, and I'd had the mini home organized and scheduled for a delivery date before we even got to New Brunswick.
And pre-planned, like everything inside, what we wanted, all the specifications, like all that was already figured out before we got here.
So the first time you saw this property was when you arrived.
Yeah.
When we drove into the driveway,
Yeah.
and it wasn't much of a driveway, it was more of a goat trail. That was our first time being on the property. That was also the first time we'd been in New Brunswick.
Okay.
We had never actually even visited New Brunswick before that. And we were actually wowed by the beauty. Driving through northern New Brunswick reminded us a lot of Scotland. And driving through this area, the East Coast, the West Coast ain't got nothing on the East Coast when it comes to beauty. The shorelines, the ocean, the nature, the vast amount of forests out here. It's an absolutely gorgeous province.
You come up with a name for your farmstead.
So it's not really a super exciting reason. Like sometimes people have these grand stories behind why they named something that they did. The main thing that we wanted to do is we wanted something that represented the area that we were in. And one of the first things we noticed when we moved out here is there were a lot of ravens around the property. Being my favorite bird, I was pretty cool with that. So that was one of the reasons we went with the raven part. And Willow, it holds a lot of nostalgia value for us. Both the farms we came from, we have fond memories of the giant willow tree that was in the lawn or in the pasture or something like that, and the things you could do around it, those long little whiffs, you'd whip each other with them or whatever, right? Or maybe you weave them into a reef or something like that. So there's a lot of nostalgic value to it, and we have some ideas to integrate willow trees into the property where we have a bit more extra moisture. They offered great shade for animals. and you can do a lot with.
Basket weaving,
Yeah.
I really want to get into, and living fences, living willow structures we want to build. So we kind of named we always do everything cart before the horse. We named our farm this with intentions for later. So like willow is going to be a big part of our farm later. So
And we planted a lot of willow trees on the property.
yeah, how many do you think we planted? At least
Probably 15.
15, yeah.
Yeah.
Wallace, the big guy here. Named this one Heidi. Little Bonnie Belle is my dad's cow. And then we got Beef.
Affectionately named.
Little Beef.
And what are you planning on doing with the Highland Cows? What's their purpose with the farm?
So the reason why I got into Highland Cows over any other cow is because they're more of a browser type eating animal. So when you put like an Angus into a forest, they might browse a little bit, but they need grass to sustain them. Whereas Highland cows are really good at clearing forest. And that's something we have a lot of. We have 54 acres of forest. So as we rotate these guys out into the forest in parcels and sections, they're gonna go and clear everything they can reach. They'll eat the branches, the leaves, the weeds, everything. And what that does is that opens it up for me to come in after and take out a lot of the smaller seedlings and open up the canopy so that the sunlight can get through and I can see it with some grass.
So this section alone, when you first moved in here, was all trees, was it not? I'm gonna get on this side of you so you don't have to squint at the camera.
Yeah, when we first moved here, this was thick forest. You can see actually the fence line there, what it looks like beyond that fence line. That's a good indication of what this used to look like. I think this was actually thicker.
Yeah.
And so I've gone and I've cleared out all the trees. We saved a couple of nice maples and we had it scrubbed. We had issues with a lot of garbage and debris being under the ground.
So when you first moved here, this was a dumping zone for,
Yeah.
From what
The whole
we
community.
understand is there was a house that burnt down a few times, and instead of cleaning it up, they just pushed it out and half buried it, or I'm not sure what it was. So we had to have some machinery come in and actually peel the land back, collecting all of that debris and then hauling it out, so that it was safe to have animals again.
so these work almost like really big goats. They clear
Yeah.
everything out. They'll eat almost anything.
Essentially, they'll eat anything.
Yes, except they're just a lot easier to fence. So Wallace is an intact bull. Heidi and Bonnie Belle are female. They're about a year old, and so once they're about 2.5 years old, I'll be able to start breeding them. They'll start cycling probably this fall, and then we'll actually have to separate them. Otherwise, he'll be trying to do his thing,
Yep.
and they're just too small, too young to be able to carry them. Beef, in a 1.5 years, he's going to go in the freezer. And
Chili.
then, you know, 600 pounds of meat is a lot of meat that you can put in the freezer, right? And that's one of our goals, is being able to grow our own foods and be self-sustainable.
Now, how do you find it when you had to do that first time of saying goodbye to some of the animals as a farmer?
Well,
It's hard.
like intentionally or accidentally?
I know intentionally.
Okay.
When I'm talking about beef here, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard, but you kind of like, we have him for a purpose. Like, we're not getting it too attached to him because we know that that's going to be our food security for a while, right?
Right.
So it's hard, but it's kind of our intention is already there. It's already set.
Our first trial with that was the chickens. These things are Frankensteins of the chicken world. Like, they grow so fast that they stop walking at some point. And so you're still putting a lot of nurturing into them, building their shelter, feeding them, watering them, taking care of them every day. So when it came to butchering, you knew that was what they were for. And you know that they're not going to survive much longer the way that they grow unless you change their diet up, that sort of thing. But it was still very difficult to take them, put them in the clone, and to do the deed. It was a tug on the heart, but it's necessary. It's what we came here to do.
Part of farming, yeah.
It's feeding my family, so it was worth it. It's something you have to do. this back here are our road. So this connects to the corral up front. So when I unlock it for the cows can then use, I call it the throat, down here onto the road. And this road, we have plans for it going the full extent of the property. And then we build the paddocks off from east to west.
And how far back does the property go? I know it's 54 acres.
It's about 1.4 kilometers, 1.3 kilometers, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And so I'll be able to build like 100-foot paddocks by 500 feet across. And gives the cows access to that back pasture. But in order to get that built, there was a little bit of a swampy area in the front here. We found that there's a couple of springs there, and as we were trying to use the machinery to go in there, there's about 5 feet of mud. And in order to build the road, all of that mud had to come out, and then large rocks dumped in its place. So it went very over budget. But it was also necessary because we have the same problem on the other side of the property, and we had to. This is the side that I chose that we had to.
And the future of that back 1.2 kilometers is what?
So that'll be sectioned off into pasture, possibly hay down the road, and orchards as well. We would like to do some build some more orchards.
Okay.
And we do have plans for a U-pick.
Okay.
Of some kind, like berry bushes and orchard at some point. But that'll be down the road.
I can show you the area. That
Literally down the road.
Yeah.
Behind me here is a bit of an experiment. What we did is we have our septic field at the top, and then the slope that comes off of it, we carved in what's called swales. So we've got humps that in behind them have a ditch. And so as the water runs off of the yard, which has a slight pitch to it, it runs into the ditches. And the ditches are there to hold on to the water. And the longer you hold on to the water, the more it can saturate the ground around it, feeding the things that you are planting on the swales themselves. So the swales, the raised piece is the part that we have been planting berry bushes on. The top has over 50 strawberry plants that have been planted this year on it. And we plan on getting up to 50 to maybe even 75 raspberry bushes planted it as well, and then getting those trellised up there. So this is what we affectionately call our berry terrace. We just haven't fully got it planted out yet this year, but that is what the plan is for that. As well as we're worried about erosion, and so we've been planting sedums, spearmint, and other mint varieties that are really good at holding the soil together and grow very well in rocky, kind of sandy type of soil. What I call my chicken Frankenstein. It's kind of like a transforming chicken brooder. I can have them in here during colder temperatures as they're growing up, because chicks need about 95 degrees Fahrenheit to stay warm. If it gets colder than that, they don't have the insulation that they need, and they can actually die from exposure. So they stay warm in here, and they live in here for about 3.5 weeks. And then I'm able to move them out. And when I move them out, I can actually disconnect this top section right off, and I can use it as a mobile shelter out in the field. And the floor that they're on is completely removable. I can grab the handles, just pull it out for all the cleaning process. Makes that a lot easier as well. So it's kind of a 3-stage transforming chicken tractor / brooder. That was kind of a bit of my own design off of a few different things that I saw on YouTube, and this is the second year we've used it. There's a couple things that probably change about it, but overall it's been working really good. If not, it keeps them almost too hot.
And you buy them as chicks?
So the meat birds you buy as chicks, they're day olds, and in 3.5 weeks they're almost fully feathered. They can go out onto the field as long as they still have shelter, and in 8 weeks those things are ready to be butchered and to go into your freezer. The darker colored ones, I hatched a bunch of layers at the same time as the meat chickens came in, and so I just put them all together. And once we figure out which ones are females will move into the bigger chicken coop with the other chickens, and the roosters will stay with the meat birds to be processed at a later date.
So moving here, our goal for the garden was to grow enough food for ourselves, for us and my dad for a year, and to preserve and that kind of thing, and to grow also for our community. So we're gonna have sections of the garden for us and for market garden, cut flowers, all of that. The garden starts inside in our spare room with, we've got like a seedling shelf and lights set up, and I start all my own seeds. I just really enjoy doing that. I love bringing them from seed all the way to harvest. And we've been slowly expanding this garden. We started with nothing but just like forest ground. And as we cut down the trees, we used the logs to build the raised garden beds. I've got a particular pattern in mind that I've really wanted to accomplish. So you can see they're kind of like corners, 20 feet long, and then this one's like 12 feet long. So once it's all done, this is I think 74 feet across and 84 feet across this way, or vice versa. But when you see it from the sky, it's going to be this really cool pattern. I'm really excited about that. In each of the beds, we've got the native soil at the bottom, and then we use topsoil and compost as well to give it lots of nutrition. This year I wasn't taking any chances with the marmot, and I covered most of the beds with this insect fabric.
So you were having critters come and digging in your gardens and
Yeah.
helping themselves?
Last year, and even at the beginning of this year when I first planted, we had a couple of marmot and some other critters come in, and last year ate down all of my broccoli. And so this year I've planted it under the netting so it's safe. So a good portion, I'd say probably around 50% of the garden now is flowers, like for cutting, because I really want to do cut flower bouquets. I've been already making some, and so I've got my stalks here and snapdragons, and I've got a bunch of other flowers all the way down through the garden. And I really wanted to use professional quality equipment this year, and so I've got, you know, special netting and landscape fabric, and I really want to focus on quality. Good quality plants, you need good quality equipment.
So are there some challenges about planting in New Brunswick versus what you've done in the past in our growing seasons?
So in Alberta it's actually quite dry, and here we get a lot of rain, and our soil, it drains fairly well, but there's definitely some areas that are more clay than others, and so having the raised garden beds really helped with that, with drainage. Planting here, we do have a longer growing season, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have more sun here. In Alberta we had a ton of sun, like a lot of sunny days, but everything here is just taken off. Like last year, even for first year garden, I was really impressed with how things grew, and this year too, like you can see our garlic is like
Wow.
3 feet tall.
Yeah.
Already. So
And when did that go into the earth?
this went in last October.
Okay.
So they overwintered fine. We covered them up, like mulched them for winter, and they grew up this spring like they were the first things that popped up.
Wow.
They're the easiest animals to take care of on the farm, and the friendliest. They love the attention, they love the affection. You can see they love the mud too. And there's a reason why they actually put mud on themselves. It acts as a natural sunscreen, as well as they're in this forest. They've probably got about 4 acres here to roam, and they choose to be right here. But as they're out in the forest, there's a lot of bug pressure, and the mud helps them to, gives them a defense against the bugs.
So what's the plan with the pigs?
So the pigs are like a rototiller. If you look at the ground to your right, that used to look like solid forest ground over here. And they've gone through and they've turned everything up. And while they're doing that, they're also kind of evening out the landscape, pulling out the rocks, ripping up the roots, because our plan is actually to clear all of this and build a couple of greenhouses as well as a market garden. And in order to do that, we've got to get rid of the trees. And so the pigs are an integral step there as they're ripping up. You can see her with the nose there a little bit. They go through the topsoil like it's nothing. And they rototill it up, unlocking seed banks that have been dormant for years, as well as ripping up any of the noxious weeds that we don't want there.
And you got them as piglets?
We got them as piglets, 10 weeks
They're
old.
just about this big.
Yeah.
They're super cute and small.
Yeah.
Now look at them.
And they're how old now?
Well, now
They're
they're
6 months, or no, 7 months old.
probably about 7, 8 months old, yeah. So we're probably going to be breeding them towards the end of summer for the first time. I think they're pretty much almost up to weight now. And then we'll have piglets on the farm, and we'll probably just sell the piglets. There's lots of people that are always looking for pigs. So this is our new batch of chicks that we've hatched. They're about 5 weeks old, and now they've fully integrated into the main flock. And they will be our future egg layers.
How many eggs do you get in a
It
course
varies.
of a week?
So egg production varies on a lot of factors. Number one is health. If you've got a flock that's struggling with some health conditions, it will really drop your egg rate because they're fighting off a cold, right? Or they're fighting off a virus. Number two is temperature. During the winter, they spend a lot of time keeping themselves warm, and so the energy that they would normally be putting into egg production is limited. Also, whenever they're molting, which means they're shedding their feathers to grow in new feathers, that can be a couple of weeks, it can be a couple of months, but they're spending a lot of energy doing that as well. So you don't get as much egg production that way. So numbers is the key. Having more chickens means you're gonna get more eggs. Right now with 25 chickens, we can get anywhere from 25 eggs a day down to like 8, depending on the day, right?
And what's the life expectancy of one of your hens?
So the life expectancy of the hens can be up to 5-6 years, I believe, depending on the breed. But when it comes to production, they're really only productive for about 3 years. After 3 years, they're put out to pasture, right? To a retirement home. And we're hoping to actually use that. Some people would just cull them. Some people would try to sell them to get rid of them. We're actually hoping to use them out in the pasture because chickens can still be a very effective tool when it comes to reducing fly pressure, especially when it's following cows. So as the cows drop the patties, the flies like the patties, lay their eggs in it. The chickens come in after, rip those patties apart, and eat all the larvae or eggs or flies that they find. So they actually can be a very useful tool into keeping the cows healthy and keeping the fly population down.
And then they get to have an extended, like, almost like an afterlife.
Yeah,
Essentially.
they get to retire in the
They
forest,
get a good retirement.
which
instead of
is where,
commercially, they would just call them.
yeah,
We don't want to do that.
and chickens naturally come from the jungles. They were a jungle bird, and so they're very at home in the forest. So if you see her back, how it's bare here, that's a sign that she's molting. So she's losing feathers to replace them.
I think she's also one of the favorite hens of the roosters.
They don't mind being held too much. So some people have issues with aggressive roosters. We've worked a lot with our roosters to make sure that they're not aggressive at all. And we've never been attacked by them. If anything, they follow us around. They know that we're a source of food for them. And what I didn't know about chickens when we first got them is that roosters are an awesome caretaker of the hens. Not only do they protect them with their life, but they seek out food and then they let out a special call to bring the hens in to that source of food. They'll even pick the food up and drop it in front of the hens to show them. It's one of the most incredible things, really. Yeah.
Not this time.
Not this time. It's because somebody's watching.
Yeah.
He's like, no, my hens already found it. So in Canada, yes, thank you. In
You know you're Canadian chicken, right? You're proud. You.
So in Canada, we have what's called the Loop program. And so what the Loop program tries to do is connect farmers with grocery stores. On average, some of the bigger grocery stores, like your superstores and stuff, can throw out up to 1,000 pounds of food a day. And a lot of that food goes to waste because it's just being thrown out. But when you can connect that store with a farmer, well, now you have a source that you can feed your animals a variety of diets, from veggies and fruits and that sort of stuff, and be able to feed your animals. When we get a good load from Loop, we have to go pick it up on the truck, but when we bring it, we sort it all up into buckets. I can feed my chickens for pretty much a week off of one load, as well as my pigs. I can feed them for a week, and we have plenty, 2 good-sized totes of treats for the cows.
So what sort of things are they throwing away?
It can be anything. Some stuff, it's not right for all animals. Like you'll get some dairy products and some meat products and whatnot. The meat products, we have a neighbor who has dogs who loves to feed his dogs raw meat, so it goes that way. But when it comes to the chickens, they can eat everything from breads, seeds, fruits, veggies, that sort of thing. The pigs, the same thing. They eat a lot of baking goods. They eat a lot of veggies as well. They're kind of like a catch-all with most things, just not meat.
But they'll give out like all the expired like bakery cakes and pastries and cookies and everything that's like gone bad or they can't sell, and then the pigs just enjoy them.
So it's anything that has a best before date that they just can't
essentially.
keep on their shelves
Food
anymore.
that's been expired and stuff,
Right.
or no longer, like the packaging is all damaged, so the fruit is damaged and you can't sell it anymore, then it's gone.
Sometimes you'll even get canned goods and you just have to open up the cans, dump it out for the pigs or the chickens, whichever can have it. And mostly produce, I'd say 80% of it is, or maybe 70% is produce and fruits and vegetables.
Now, are all the local grocery stores on that program, or just
Not all of them.
Superstore? Or
So if you work at a grocery store and you're not part of that program, if you contact Loop, just do a quick Google search, you will find that. They can
LOOP?
actually- Yes, LOOP. They will be able to match you up with some local farmers and get that ball rolling for you.
Perfect.
So what I have in the back there is I have a bunch of straw. So as they're on their bars, they poop on the straw overnight, and then I use that as compost material. So this one's molting, you can see. This one in here, she's actually laying on some eggs. She's trying to hatch them. They should be hatching any day. And then in here, sorry,
There you go.
they lay the eggs and they roll out to the bottom here.
Find you as far as social media if they want to continue to watch your journey?
That's a great question. So we are on YouTube, Willow Farmstead. We also have a by the same name on Facebook and Instagram. We do a lot more recent updates on Facebook and Instagram, and we're trying as much as we can to keep our YouTube up to date. We're probably about 6 to 8 months behind, but we're trying to get a video out every week or every couple of weeks. Yeah.
And if they're in the local area and they want to help support you, how can they do that?
Just contact us through our social media. Reach out and say hi. We always respond as soon as we can, and we love hearing from customers or people that have watched our content and really appreciate it. Or we get a lot of messages where people were thinking about moving to New Brunswick or somewhere else, or even just starting their homestead, and watching us and what we've been able to accomplish in this short amount of time, knowing nothing. They found us inspiring, which is great. So if we can help inspire people, then that makes it that much more worth it for us. Yeah.
And we're also putting up a farm stand here. Sundays is our typical day that we're going to be about 10 a.m. We haven't fully set the hours yet, but we're doing 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. right now. And so they can drop by the farm if they want to see our cows or pick up some vegetables and flowers.
Anything from eggs, vegetables, and Caitlin's been putting together these beautiful flower bouquets every weekend.
Well, thank you, Rob and Caitlin, for joining us here in the Maritimes and for being a part of this program.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this first installment of getting to know the community, getting to know our neighbors. Thank you once again to Rob and Caitlin for having me out to Willow Farmstead to look around and see what they are doing, what they've accomplished so far, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go back out there and see how they're making out as the season goes along. If you're interested in following along on their journey, make sure you go check them out on their socials here on YouTube at Willow Farmstead, and also on Facebook and Instagram as well at the same name. That's it for today, guys. Have a magical week. What, Polo? You say like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends?
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
Bye.
You guys aren't camera shy, are ya? How's it going, guys? Hey, Wallace.